Hey everybody, it's the biggest bad boys of podcasting. Matt Michaels here with Sin City Steve and Simon Street. DJ Impact is out looking for his slippers once again. So, it's wrestling talk. We're gonna get right into it. All right, this week, Steve, what do you got for our four-way stop?
Well, this week, Matt Michaels, Maxwell Jacob Friedman is your new AEW World Champion after defeating Jon Moxley with assistance from William Regal and the Brass Knucks.
You called it.
That sounds familiar.
You called
TK,
it.
since you're listening or watching, thank you for your support. Elsewhere, great match. It was everything that it should have been. And yeah, it just down to the MJ or the William Regal turn at the end of the match. They foreshadowed that stuff. Like I said, from the cinematography, from the way that they shot certain scenes, it was predictable. But quite frankly, having a coherent wrestling show that is predictable is better than just swerving people just for the sake of swerving people at the end of the day. Elsewhere, Jamie Hayter.
Swerve. Interesting choice of words.
Yeah, because swerve was swerving.
We'll talk about that later. Jamie Hayter is your new AEW Interim Women's World Champion after defeating Toni Storm with assistance from Britt Baker and Rebel. Wait, what? Didn't I just say that somebody else won a title after outside interference?
Mm-hmm.
Whatever. Anyway, they actually pulled the trigger on it. They actually put the title on Hayter. I'm totally here for it. And I'm not going to lie. Those two ladies put on what was possibly the best women's match in recent AEW history. Now, obviously the company's only been around for 3 years, but I don't want to say that it was the best match in AEW women's history, but some great spots, too much interference at the end. But yeah, Jamie Hayter, your new AEW Interim Women's World Champion. Awesome.
Simon Street, what do you got?
I got some from Full Gear as well, man. Definitely to echo some of the sentiment of Sin City Steve, that was a very good women's match as well. Another women's match was Saraya facing Britt Baker. It's her first match back. I think they said 5-6 years, something like that. I feel like it was even longer, but she looked pretty decent. She didn't have a large amount of ring rust like I figured she would. Her brother was in attendance, and it was really, really good. It was very heartfelt. I ain't gonna lie. I almost had a little teary-eyed when she went over on Britt Baker, and it was believable. It was pretty believable how she won. It was straight up. It wasn't no foolery. So appreciate that. Also, too, another good part of the show that I really, really, really enjoyed was Death Triangle defeating those trio championships against the Elite. Coming back, that was a really good match as well. Obviously, Rey Fenix learned how to cheat finally and use that little small hammer finally as he was about to get the one-winged angel. So that was a good one as well. And you can hear Pac telling him, look at your work, be proud of your work. So I appreciate that. Outside of that, man, I don't want to echo too much because I know we'll be talking about a lot. MJF being champion. Super excited for that. I think anybody, whether you watch AEW, don't, you knew this guy has stock and talent. All the boxes are clicked. And so now that he has the championship, it's interesting to see how that's going to go with AEW. You finally have someone in place with the title. Don't be smirching Moxley or anything like that, but you have the complete package. Unmoldable clay. Tony, don't touch the shit. Let some other people touch it. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, and I mean, they're better than Mox, that's for sure.
Yeah.
All right. Also this week, Seth Rollins is finally a face. Going over on Finn Balor. That match was pretty impressive for Raw. But what caught my eye the most was Tozawa playing poker with JPL and Corbin. That was fucking hysterical. Good little vignette. Didn't know he was still with the company. That's the other thing. So, New Day calling Gunther Lurch from the Adam Cave.
Yes, you rang.
Which, the match was interesting to have a 3-on-3 with Braun Strowman joining the New Day, which why not make him an official member of the New Day? I want to see him come out with the unicorn horns again and have Braun Strowman and the unicorn horn. Be great. More merch sales skyrocket. And finally, Zoe Stark's heel promo on NXT, which really is interesting because as much as she's putting out the heel vibes, she even gave Mandy a little praise as being a good champion. The crowd is still kind of behind her idea of being a badass, and it's gonna be interesting to see how well the heel aspect plays, especially against Nikita, considering that the fans have been pretty all in on her. So it should be pretty cool to see where that ends up going, and giving her a chance to finally play a heel after being a face for pretty much her whole career. All right, here we go on to Too Sweet for the Week. Simon Street, what is Too Sweet this week?
Man, I will say Too Sweet for the week is going to again come from Full Gear, man. That match, cage match with Jungle Boy and Luchasaurus was fire. I have to honestly say they exceeded some of my expectation. No diss on them. I just didn't think they could dig that deep, and they sure did. Jungle Boy with that elbow, precision sharpshooting elbow to the sternum of Luchasaurus off the top of the cage. I've seen only 2 other wrestlers in my lifetime do that elbow from that height that well. And he don't have a big frame, so I wonder what his shoulder feel like and his elbow feel like. But that was an excellent match. And then also, too, from Full Gear, too, that Ring of Honor World Championship with Claudio Castagnoli, Bryan Danielson, Sammy Guevara, and Chris Jericho was good. It was really, really good. Even the way that Chris Jericho came in with what is the name of the move again? I always mess it up, where he does the elbow.
The Judas effect.
Thank you, the Judas effect. How he I guess Guevara was getting swung and he hit it just right. And I was like, wow, that's a clean finish. And anytime there's a 4-way and the champion needs to win, I want to see shit like that, because as they did state, it's about a 25% chance that if you can even win, then you're the champion. So to me, that makes logical sense. Those were my Too Sweet for the week, all in one show. So it's like eating a big extra bowl of cereal Saturday morning, watching your cartoons, and life is just great.
It's great.
See what kind of cereal I was eating.
Yeah, I mean, sure, why not? I will say this week, it's nice to see Austin Theory getting his shine back. All of a sudden now, it's aggression, which worked for a certain John Cena. So I think this might work for Theory, kind of rebuild him a bit. Man, the Sammy and the Usos this week, everything was so great with the story building up to the big ending of SmackDown, where we find out KO is joining the team of the Brutes and Drew McIntyre, which had been floated out there. It was kind of assumed that would be what was going to happen. But just seeing that end brawl segment in the setup, they gave KO one-on-one time with Roman there, which is pretty big. And maybe that's possibly what we'll see come out of this, is maybe a little KO and Roman feud, with Sammy kind of being the in the middle, and then I would say eventually Sammy betraying not the Usos but Kevin Owens. And then we get Kevin Owens versus Sammy for the 900th time.
Oh, look at her.
I swear those two are in competition with Gargano and Tommaso for as many back and forth feuds across brands.
Yeah,
but that's
seriously.
very Brute-y.
Yeah. So that's what I got going. Steve, what do you got this week?
All right. So, as has been mentioned, the Elite returned to AEW at Full Gear with some new entrance music. They entered to Carry On My Wayward Son by Kansas, classic song. The Elite returned, but notice I did not say that they returned and won the AEW World Trios titles. That's because the Lucha Bros picked up the win after, as Simon had mentioned, Rey Fénix actually used the hammer. So yeah, we'll see what the fallout is from there. What's on the horizon for Death Triangle? Solid match by all 6 guys. Everybody had their own little showcase moments in there. It really was great to see. I made note that Nick Jackson looked absolutely phenomenal. Yes. No disrespect to absolutely anybody else in the match. Nick Jackson looked like $1,000,000. So great stuff by everybody involved. Elsewhere, Saraya, welcome back. She went out and had a good match with Britt Baker, especially after being gone for 5 years. Unfortunately, the crowd didn't quite know who to cheer for because, yeah, Saraya came back. She was a huge babyface. Last week on Dynamite, Britt Baker cuts probably one of the better babyface promos cut by anybody this year, and she's the heel. Okay, so other than that, and outside of the crowd not really knowing who to cheer for, it was a great match, great baseline for Saraya, and Britt was a perfect antagonist, and I can't wait to see more from these guys.
You know, it's going to be interesting to see where they go with it, especially we don't know. Like right. you don't know. It's such a question mark, and that leads us into what? WTF. I'll start with this one because of the fact that you kind of hit on something there. MJF, is he a heel or is he a face now? Was the Blackpool Club, they were heels, but then they became faces, but now Mox is a face. There are a lot of who the fuck cares in terms of the investment of what they're doing with these characters. The perfect example is you put the TNT title on Joe when you're building Hobbs as the monster. It makes no fucking sense. It's almost maddening. And then does that mean that since Wardlow lost the belt, now MJF has the heavyweight championship, so now Wardlow is going to be the big baby face and MJF is going to be the heel, and we're going to get the exact same feud we got just months ago? It feels like that's where that's headed at some point here. Just recycle it, go back to it. But the other thing that makes no sense, you open the show with a cage match that, of course, the cage doors open. You then start using weapons. So it's a brutal match. That's your first fucking match. Open with the Jericho match, okay? Because now every single thing that happens beyond this cage match is looked at as not nearly as important as that cage match was. Meaning brass knuckles, bell hammer, TNT belt, all that shit, and then the pliers were the other thing that were being fought over. And then you also had, like you said, the in Hater's match, the costing the belt. There was just all these endings that were not clean for a pay-per-view, which didn't make sense. So that's my feeling on that show. Steve, what do you
got? Well, merch watch. Vicky Guerrero wore an I'm Your Mommy shirt to the ring. That normally wouldn't be newsworthy, except that it was the Rhea Ripley I'm Your Mommy shirt from WWE Shop.
Yeah.
Okay.
See the correlation, though?
Completely. completely. But still, and another thing, Sting and Jeff Jarrett facing off in the middle of the ring in 2022, and yes, there were loud TNA chants. Oh boy.
Why didn't they say WCW?
I don't know if you want to garner TNA chants in 2022 if you're AEW. Hopefully, Jeff Jarrett is off TV going forward. If not, what the fuck? Elsewhere, Michaels, you actually hit on it. Wardlow versus Powerhouse Hobbs versus Samoa Joe. This match was a good old-fashioned Haas fight. It was a very, very solid match. That being said, this segment is WTF. So, of course, it's here, and it's here because of the ending. You had the perfect opportunity to pass the TNT title from one young, homegrown talent to another without either of them having to lose the match.
Yep.
But this could have started a great trajectory for Powerhouse Hobbs. Instead, Samoa Joe chokes out Powerhouse Hobbs. So Hobbs, who you've been building, takes the fall out of the three. I mean, Wardlow was at least somewhat protected by not taking the fall, but I don't quite get the fucking mentality or the reasoning behind this. Doesn't make sense. What the fuck?
It does make sense after we found out that Tony Khan is based out of esports pro wrestling. Because that's what it feels like, man. Simon, go ahead.
I was actually that was part of my WTF for the week was, I was just scratching my head because I thought the same thing. I was like, you've been building up Hobbs, and he looked to be the bigger aggressor out of it. I mean, pound for pound, I even was saying to my girl, I was like, if AEW don't do something with him, WWE will pick his ass up real quick. That's how serious I am about it.
Oh yeah,
because he's ready. All he needs is a little bit of direction. He's ready to go. With that being said, Sin City already went ad nauseum with speak on that, so I'll go on to my next WTF. SmackDown, Shotzi versus Shayna Baszler. I wasn't feeling it. I wasn't feeling it at all. I felt like the match itself was unnecessary, especially going in, heading towards Survivor Series. I thought that it's supposed to be Shotzi building into, her match with, the champ. But I just don't know. Like, I just felt like the match wasn't necessary. It threw me off on SmackDown as a show in general. I hope WWE maybe thinks of that. I don't know. I'm just one person. I'm sure other people maybe felt the same, but I just didn't like it. Outside of that, something that was mentioned earlier is Zoe Stark. Her explanation of why she attacked, Nikita Lyons. I'm feeling her persona heal, but I felt that her promo was not convincing. And we do know that's something that she's kind of working on. And maybe it's just there's certain molds that works better for her. I just felt she could have conveyed that a lot better. She just kept going around and around and around. So I wasn't feeling, I was like, what the hell? Because I was expecting her in this heel mode capacity to really be official and thorough. But, take it back to the drawing table. There's a lot of room for her to improve.
Yeah, and like what you say, and around and around and around, that's the writing team.
True.
True. So it's kind of a combination of trying to figure that out. All right, what are we on the lookout? Simon, what are you looking forward to?
A couple things I'm looking for. I really was feeling SmackDown, with New Day, Braun Strowman, and Imperium. I think there might be something there. It's no secret that right now, pretty much the way it's going to go with, we have confirmed reports of Roman being part-time and still holding those belts. Your main titles on each show are prospectively going to be United States Championship and the Intercontinental Championship, and the people holding those belts are pretty solid. With that being said, when it comes to Gunther, showcasing Imperium is a plus. You got to understand they're a sound group. If you watch the NXT product, you would know that and know that they're a sound group. So much, in fact, that Triple H brought up Giovanni up to the main roster immediately because he saw that it was a little bit lacking, complete. I will say this. I'm interested to see how this is going. Also, in the background, you have the World Cup tournament going on. Now, that World Cup tournament, interesting enough, somebody else is still in there to be seen. Obviously, Braun Strowman. So it's interesting how all those pieces are coming together, So again, I'm looking forward to seeing how that's going to play out. I did like the matchup. I like the fact that Gunther allowed Braun Strowman to shine a little bit. But at the same time, Gunther still showed it. So again, it's a great even matchup, and I want to see more of that. I mean, you never know. In fact, right now, I'm calling it. I'm okay with seeing Intercontinental Championship be defended against Braun Strowman. I'm just going to call it right now. I would love to see that. It would be great.
Yeah, and I would assume that's what we're going to see, right? I myself was very interested, and we saw it a little bit start last week, but Bray and LA Knight.
Mm-hmm.
It looks like maybe this will be Bray's first in-ring feud. And could it end where LA Knight becomes some kind of persona in the game of Bray Wyatt? Maybe that's what they do this time, is kind of what they did with Alexa Bliss, and have some guys get affected by, this craziness of Uncle Howdy. But really the biggest thing I'm looking out for is the single most confusing match in the history of pro wrestling being announced: the Iron Survivor Challenge.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
Good job, HBK. Good job.
Like, it seems like, they were driving on the road back in 1997. It must have had a conversation between Hunter and Sean. Wouldn't it be great if we had 5 wrestlers and every 5 minutes someone comes in, and then whoever's got more points at the end, and then you get sent into a penalty box, and then, oh man, it's pinfall, submission, disqualification. Oh, like, holy shit. And there's rules. It's like, holy fuck. And there's going to be 2, a women's and a men's. So it'd be interesting. I would assume they'll start setting up those 5. The show's December 10th. So it'd be interesting to see what happens with that. Steve, what are you looking forward to?
Well, I am looking out for what's next for Swerve Strickland and Keith Lee. Obviously, we are spiraling toward a solo feud between the two of them. But, I'm very interested in the dynamic of that and where the two progress from there. Obviously, Swerve has proven in the last few weeks just how good of a heel he can be. And I don't think that we've seen the full potential realized. I think that he can be one of the top heels in your company if you give him the ball. So yeah, it very, very solid match between those two and the Acclaimed. Finally, we got the implosion of Swerve in Our Glory. Long overdue, but at least we got it. Quite frankly, I'm also looking forward to what's next for Jack Perry and Luchasaurus. You have to spiral those two away from each other at this point. That match definitely felt like a blow off. Not to mention, who knows if Jack Perry's going to miss some time. You mentioned the elbow off the top, Simon. You had to have also seen that pretty nasty looking bruise in his rib area.
Yeah.
So I'm sure that, he didn't walk away from that match unscathed. Good stuff by both of those guys. But yeah, let's spin those two away from each other. Let's, get them pursuing other things. And also, fresh off the press is something that I'm really looking forward to. It was announced on November 20th that Kenny Omega is going back to New Japan Pro Wrestling after nearly 4 years absence, and he will challenge Will Ospreay for the IWGP United States Heavyweight Championship at Wrestle Kingdom 17 on January the 4th, 2023. Sign me the fuck up.
That's going to be good. That's going to be crazy.
And the belt collector comes back.
Well, that's good. If he does, he can go to WWE and collect the 24/7 retired title out of this. So Dana Brooke can waste 5 minutes of our time explaining how pissed off she is.
Yeah. Unfortunately, you don't have R-Truth to do it, so why not? Dana Brooke can be mad. The one thing about the Swerve match that really, Steve, made no sense in terms of you're making Swerve the heel. but Keith Lee walked out on him.
He walked out on his principles. Okay.
No. What I'm saying is the heel. If you want to solidify your heel, you have
Usually
your
he
heel walk out so
Yeah.
that your baby face gets beaten.
Yeah.
They beat the fuck out of Swerve to win the match. So it makes no sense. But again.
But you also do have to look at it from the standpoint that the Acclaimed are baby faces. So would it have necessarily been great for them to take advantage of the 2-on-1 to win the match?
Right.
It's a catch-22. I totally see your point.
And you're also they put themselves in that position because when if you just want to do gray lines, then you can't consider the Acclaimed baby faces because it's babyface versus babyface then, and then you have a heel turn, but then you have the heel who's supposed to be, he gets his uppings right as I don't know. It's crazy. But with that said, time for Best in Show. I'll make it simple here. I'll start off. I'll say SmackDown. And one of the things that Simon, you said, Shotzi. Here's the problem with Shotzi. Shotzi is not anything higher than Liv Morgan. And that's unfortunate. So what you just saw them do was basically Shotzi is kind of because they have to have basically dummy bags, right? You have to have people to be beat, but they still have characters, so it's entertaining, right? That's great. But they set up Raquel. And that's where it looks like they're heading, is to go Ronda versus Raquel. Whether or not they pull the trigger on Ronda losing the belt from that, don't know. And will we see more from Ronda and Shayna together? And that might be something they might do, is a tag team title run on them. So there we go. That's for me. And then all the other Uso stuff was just phenomenal. That ending was great. All right, Steve, what do you got?
AEW Full Gear. I know, shocker. Yes, it was a long pay-per-view, as they tend to be, but it was a very solid pay-per-view. Everything from the 0-hour pre-show, where we saw Ricky Starks advance to the finals of the World Title Eliminator Tournament, where he will face Ethan Page. Again, TK, thanks for your support of the show. We appreciate you tuning in. Elsewhere, the one match that I did not speak about whatsoever during the other segments of this show, Chris Jericho is still your Ring of Honor, world champion after defeating Bryan Danielson, Claudio Castagnoli, and Sammy Guevara in an absolute fucking banger of a match. Went over 20 minutes. This match stole the show. And that's why I'm mentioning it during the Best in Show. These guys absolutely brought it. You had everything that you could have wanted in this match in terms of, different styles, different ways of doing things. Jericho being the ring general, Claudio being a Superman. You had Sammy Guevara doing crazy shit. And Bryan Danielson is probably one of the best in-ring technical wrestlers of our generation. And you put it all together. That match stole the show. And quite frankly, this was a very, very, very good pay-per-view. Yeah, awesome.
Simon Street.
Mine's also going to be Full Gear, AEW. Some things that I really noticed with the show, out of 10 matches, not counting the pre-show, only 2 of them were, somewhat snooze alerts, and not even horrible. It was just, like I mentioned earlier, to you guys in the conversation, Jade Cargill versus, the Thief, Nyla Rose. It was an okay match, but I could have skipped it if I needed to, just because it's a Jade Cargill match. Nothing towards her, it's just the way she's built. And then also too, as was mentioned before, the Sting and Darby Allin versus Jeff Jarrett and Jay Lethal. It wasn't a horrible match, but again, it's a match that, I could have not watched it. But outside of that, all of the matches were really just, I feel, for me, top tier. Had me really engaged, had me watching, I didn't watch it live, so I watched it after it was taped and kind of would go back on certain matches. Really, really good. I felt the pacing was good as well, too. It was very well paced, which that has been a challenge with AEW sometimes. We know they can do it because they've done it before, but sometimes they're not consistent. And then one last thing I'll say is typically, and this is just my opinion, so don't fry me, AEW fans. Full Gear, since its inception, has not been not a good, but it hasn't been a stellar pay-per-view. I felt like this was a very stellar pay-per-view for Full Gear. So, so I appreciate that. So all in all, man, I really enjoyed it. The finishes were good. And again, this is for someone that is a Mayweather fan. I will admit that that's who I am. I was engaged. And so that's a good thing when you can get people to still retune in and engage in a product.
There you go. All right, everyone. This has been Wrestling Talk. Tune in tomorrow for 3 Count, and then Wednesday for our Thanksgiving special, then Friday for the DeFalco Files. So that's what we got going this week. Everyone, thank you for tuning in, and until later, I gotta say it, happy wrestling, everyone.